one of my favorite topics of all time on this episode of Cell TV, fasting, but it's different, I promise you. I interview a pastor, and Pastor Shane Idleman. Wait to hear the message. I'm telling you, fasting, you've heard the physical benefits, but spiritual, emotional, that's how fasting for a purpose started. I don't know if you actually know that story, but 20,000 people on my Facebook, we fasted obviously many times in growing, but it was actually started for a spiritual reason. I tell that story. But I'm telling you, wait till you hear the message. If you weren't excited about fasting after this episode, you're going to be even more excited. And I believe if you're on the fence of like, hey, I want to fast, but this is going to change your views, no doubt. By the way, all religions have one thing in common. It's not prayer, fasting. I believe we're called to it, but the pastor makes the point, and many more you're going to want to hear on this episode of Cell TV. I'll see you there.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cellular Healing TV. Today, we welcome Pastor Shane Idleman, and he and Dr. Pompa are here to discuss the spiritual and physical benefits of fasting. Shane Idleman is the founder and lead pastor of Westside Christian Fellowship in Southern California, and he is an inspiration to his community on the topics of fasting, breaking plateaus, spirituality, and mindset. You can read more about Shane in our show notes. You can also find him at shaneidleman.com. And I'm going to turn this over to you two. I know you have a lot to talk about. So welcome, Dr. Pompa and Shane.
It's great to be here. I'm ready for the questions.
Yeah. Hey, Shane. Yeah, no, this is my viewers know, right? This is one of my favorite topics of all time. And on my Facebook, we have over 20,000 people who we've led through several fasts. So, and on my Facebook, I can't help myself. I always, of course, I talk about the physical benefits of fasting, but I also on my Facebook talk about the spiritual benefits, the emotional benefits, the benefits from a different perspective that I've never discussed here on Cell TV. So this is a first, and I don't know who it was. It was one of my, Facebook fasting group people that sent me an article that you wrote, and I read it, and I said, I've got to interview this guy on Cell TV. So welcome. That's why you're here.
It's great to be here, and I kind of stumbled on fasting like you did. It's been about 8 years now for spiritual reasons, and I was reading it throughout the Bible, and I thought, you know what, I better try this. It's all over the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the spiritual benefits are enormous, which we'll talk to obviously in a bit. But I kind of stumbled into it. I was 40 pounds heavier back then, so my preaching has changed. You don't have that mid-morning nap. I changed my whole diet around and just feel 10 times better. That's, I guess, one good point is anytime you make spiritual benefits, God has designed us in such a way that there will be physical benefits as well. So fasting, not only spiritually, physically, it benefits as well. And, you talk about autophagy a lot and cell regeneration and things like that, but it even affects it at the spiritual level as well.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. I always say, look, you look at all the different religions in the world, and they disagree on everything. I mean, even prayer, except fasting. Probably people watching this don't realize this. It's God in the Old Testament, He really gave the Israelites, His people, very clear instructions on what they need to do to keep their health, regain their health. I mean, people don't realize that, right? Unless you're a student of the Old Testament. Fasting, it is the oldest therapy known to man. And again, God gave us so many reasons to fast, and it was just part of lifestyle then. They fasted to make decisions. They fasted for many reasons. I believe from a scientific standpoint, I just interviewed a scientist on this, our DNA is set up to fast. The problem is today, who fasts? We were forced to fast, cultural to fast. Ancient ancestors were forced to fast, but who fasts today? But scientifically, it's missing, man. Talk a little bit about what you learned here.
Well, when I started diving into fasting, first I obviously studied a lot in the Bible, and you're right. People used it for direction. They used it to seek God, and it might be good to really sum it up really quick. From a spiritual perspective, what you're doing and why all religions agree on this is because you are actually starving the flesh. The thing that wants to eat too much and drink too much, and this nature inside of us that is hell-bent on not doing what is right. And so what you do is you actually starve the flesh. I know to some people it might not make sense, but you take away a lot of that strength that it has. For example, gluttony and alcoholism is often related. When you give over to one area of life, it takes you down another area because your flesh is in control. So everyone from, like you said, Muslims and Hindu and different religions, they will fast because they realize the strength of bringing the flesh, the carnal man, whatever you want to call that. I know as a pastor, some of these terms might not make a lot of sense. But let's just say the dog, I heard Billy Graham talk about an analogy once where there's an evil dog and a good dog within us constantly battling. And whatever dog wins is the one you feed the most. So fasting is a form of starving that flesh. And as a result, we are filled more with God's Spirit as believers, as a Christian. Obviously, I'm a pastor. So I started to see the spiritual benefits in the Bible, and then also in my own personal life when I began the journey. And then I started to tie in the physical benefits, like you mentioned, epigenetics with the doctor you just interviewed, and autophagy and cell regeneration, and just the health benefits are enormous. But we have food establishments on every corner. We're not eating good as a nation. That's our healthcare problem right there. It's not more money. The healthcare problem in our nation is obesity and what we're consuming. So the benefits of fasting spiritually, to sum that up, would be on a spiritual side is to starve that flesh that competes with what God wants to do in our own heart.
Yeah, I mean, from a spiritual perspective, and I talked about this on one of my Facebook Lives, is, we become weaker physically, right? I mean, we're eating, like you said, starving the flesh. However, we become stronger spiritually. I mean, I can speak for myself that those are the times, and my wife, that we hear from God very, very differently because we become weak, He becomes stronger. And one of the things that I brought in my message was, look, when you feel that physical weakness, just know this: it's absolutely opposite. You're actually becoming stronger. So reframe yourself on how you look,
Right.
But literally, I mean, I get breakthroughs even from, just being able to solve problems when I'm fasting. And, I get thoughts, I get connected, to God in a way that, again, it's the distractions of life. I don't know what it is, but it, no doubt happens when I fast. I don't know if people realize watching this, but I was trained, I just kind of explained this to you, that I was trained early on in the early 90s on fasting for a physical standpoint. And it wasn't until it was a little over a year ago now that my wife and I decided to pray for our son, or fast for our son.
Yeah.
And she just decided, I'm going to do a Facebook Live. I decided, and she started a group called Fasting for a Purpose. And out of that was birthed this 20,000 people group that we fast with. So if you haven't, folks watching, if you haven't gone to that, it's dr.danielpompa. That's my fan page. All the videos are actually still there. But Fasting for a Purpose, join the group. But anyway, so, that was birthed out of us doing this for our son. And by the way, breakthrough. So Steve, from a biblical, I just call you Steve, I just interviewed Steve Shane. From a biblical standpoint, why do we get breakthrough emotionally, mentally, clarity, and even breakthrough for when we were fasting for our son? What is it?
Well, it's interesting. There's no scripture that outlines exactly what happens when we're fasting in the New Testament, but we do see Jesus even as a model. I mean, think about this. We don't hear from him for 30 years. He's baptized in the river with John the Baptist, and then he goes into the wilderness for what? A 40-day fast.
Yeah.
And then he comes out of that. The Bible says he was filled with the Spirit of God. Then he began his ministry. So fasting for him was a preparation. It starves the flesh and it draws you closer to God. Anytime you starve what is taking you away from God, which is the pull of the flesh and the lust of the flesh, the Bible says the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, the pride of life, all these things compete against our relationship with God. So fasting actually starves all three of those areas. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, the pride of life, it's humility. And the verse, many people like to quote 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Fasting is incorporated in all four of those areas. It's humbling, it's praying, it's seeking God. So the quick answer is you're actually starving the part of the body that is at war with God. It's at enmity with God. So if a person is a glutton and they're drunk, they just had a six-pack, they're not going to be real close to God because of that feeding that carnal nature, if there's a good way to put that. Also, all the coffee, the sugar, the caffeine. I mean, it's a drug, that's it's a central nervous stimulant, has a lot of adverse reactions. So what this does, it's basically you stop feeding the thing that is pulling you away from God, and you say, Lord, I'm drawing close to you. I'm going to deny my flesh. And really, what is the value of something when it costs us something? To give up, broccoli isn't costing us much. That's pretty easy to do. But when we say, Lord, I'm going to go without food for a day or a couple meals or a couple days, the longest I've ever went is nine days on just water. You start to grow spiritually. The Bible comes alive. The prayer life is dynamic. Worship penetrates your heart. And you just feel so much closer to God, because I think you're starving to some degree that element that pulls you away from God, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Specifically, what are the, God tells us, hey, fast when. Give us some of those whens. Like, so if people are watching this going, yeah, I need a breakthrough in my life. One of these times that the Bible urges us to fast.
Well, in Matthew, it's interesting. Jesus said, when you give, when you pray, and when you fast. It's not really an option. So I would encourage most people to just step out in faith, and we don't, should I pray about praying, or do I just pray? Do I pray about giving, or just give? And so it should be part of the Christian faith. However, to answer your question, Ezra prayed for faith, he fasted for direction in the Old Testament. Esther prayed that the king's heart would change in the Old Testament. Elisha prayed and sought God for direction on his life. Moses prayed. You see all these people praying. Usually it's for a breakthrough, like you said.
Or fasting and praying, yeah. Yeah,
fasting and praying. I need a breakthrough in this, financially, relationally. One of the scriptures that some Bible translators are put in dispute, but I think the principle is there, is when Jesus said, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. And he was talking about a demoniac, a boy being delivered from a demon. And he told his disciples, this kind, what you're dealing with here, is not going to come out except by prayer and fasting. What you're doing is you're holding on to heaven. You're pulling down heaven. When Daniel, the famous Daniel fast, when he was praying, when he was fasting, the Bible actually records that the God said, Daniel, I heard your prayer the very first day, but there was a demonic restraint holding me back. And after 21 days of seeking God and praying, the breakthrough finally came. So I believe it's part of warfare. It's part of spiritual warfare, of contending and persevering. So I would encourage people to do it just to draw closer to God. And also, if you're needing a breakthrough, if there's a demonic oppression, if you're needing, like you did, with something to happen with your children, health issues, to me, it just brings in, I don't like to say prayer on steroids, but that's kind of what fasting does. It lifts us up to a much higher level. I mean, think about it. Is it easy for you to pray after eating a big Thanksgiving dinner? No way. I mean, it's like, oh, I don't want to pray. I just want to lay on the couch. So fasting helps prayer in that way, because there's something starving physically, but hungry spiritually. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of moving the hunger from to the other.
Yeah, I believe there's something around brokenness. And I think through one of my fasts, God gave me that, and it was like, I was reading, it was a part, it was a few parts. It was like they just kept, things were broken, and, Jesus broke bread. Like when you look at brokenness, and it was where they broke the jars. I'm drawing a blank right now, but anyways, brokenness is fasting, right? It represents brokenness before God. And when that brokenness happens, God now it stimulates God moving in our life and healing. So oftentimes, again, I think it was in Jehoshaphat, there was 3 big armies from the north. They were coming down. Every situation that was impossible in the Bible, sure death was coming upon Israel. What did they do? They called upon a fast, at least when they did it right. And Jehoshaphat called the Israelites people, they fasted, and God showed up and gave mercy. Those stories, touch my heart, right? It's like, when the Israelites were going back from Babylon and crossing over. They had all this gold and silver, basically, that the Babylonians took, right, Nebuchadnezzar. And they were like, we don't have protection. We're doomed. They fasted. It's like, in the impossible, you fast. And I encourage everyone watching it. Same thing, right?
Well, yeah, and you know what? You had a great point at the beginning of this just a few minutes ago, that God says, I will not turn away a broken and contrite spirit, a broken and contrite heart. I look to that person. My eyes go to and fro to look for that person. So what better way to be broken and humble before God than saying, I'm not going to eat, God, until you answer, until I meet you, until I find you, because it costs something. It's hard to go a few days without anything. I mean, you're fighting that desire, that hunger. So it's really transferring a hunger for food to a hunger from God. But you're right, broken and contrite spirit. It's humbling. Jehoshaphat, it was.
I hear a voice. I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from. Is it Ashley? Ashley, you might want to mute yourself. Anyways, it was actually Gideon that I was thinking about. Not Gideon, the sound I just heard.
Yeah.
Gideon, it was interesting, right? Because again, there was a situation there that, it was desperate. I mean, they were outnumbered, 300 against hundreds of thousands. How possibly could they win? God had them break the jars. Again, it represents just brokenness. Here we are weak. There's no way we could win this battle, again, to modernize it, whether it be cancer, whether it be your children's, whatever it is, brokenness. It represented us coming to God. And that's what fasting, that was that word that God gave me about fasting. Is it?
Well, I think that's good. And that's what people should take away from this, because where do we get our olive oil from? The olive is crushed. Where do we get perfume from?
Broken.
The flower is crushed. And I know I love A.W. Tozer, and he said, God will not use a man greatly until he has hurt him deeply, meaning broken before God, because like you said at the beginning, in our weakness, understanding I can't do this without you, God, I need you, and through that weakness you're strengthened. So for me, fasting should be an everyday part of our lives. Don't get discouraged, if you blow it, you get back on track. And so many people, I think, just aren't prepared for the withdrawals. That's what I'm seeing. I'm gonna stop alcohol and cigarettes and processed food and sodium nitrates and caffeine, and then it's like an addict going through withdrawals, and they get frustrated and defeated. So you just taught recently or wrote the book on how to prepare to fast. Mm-hmm. That is so important. Yeah. And how do you prepare your heart? You break, your heart has to break.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I believe, again, we're meant to fast for emotional, spiritual, and physical reasons. And, because of the lifestyle that we live today, it's important to prepare for a fast, because I'm sure you've seen it in your congregation, like as I have, just people fast and their life falls apart. It becomes very impossible because they're so stuck with today's living from every aspect, right? Constant stimulation, food, sugar, all of it. There's preparation needed today to fast. And I believe fasting will change your life. It has yours, Pastor. It has mine. When people say, what is the most profound thing, that you've ever done for your health? It's fasting. I've watched, my wife was diagnosed with a pre-cervical cancer, fasting. She fasted for 11 days. And to the doctor's surprise, they didn't need her services. She didn't need her services, right? When he said, you'll be back, wasn't. I watched my 12-year-old son fast for 11 days and just transformed his addictions as far as, food. So, and of course, we've hundreds and hundreds of testimonies from very sick people, but I've watched people break through from addiction. I've watched emotional things. I've watched people fast for their children. This last fast that we just did, we were fasting. A woman, her daughter was told that her baby should be aborted because it was maimed. And our fasting group started praying. The last report last week back was, well, it actually looks like, things are good, maybe just missing one kidney. That baby was going to be aborted. And one of the things I had our group praying for, and I know you upset everyone always, but, these late term abortions, we fasted and we prayed, for that, because I believe that these decisions are beyond political. I believe there's good people on both sides of the aisle that are really very against this, and I believe it could be the downfall for our country. So fast and pray for that, folks.
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And you mentioned with the disease aspect, you would know this more than I do, obviously, but they're finding that cancer is more metabolic than genetic.
Absolutely.
You know, metabolic meaning metabolism, when our food converts energy, and the toxic effects of what we're consuming, and glyphosate and all the Roundup and different things. And so fasting, I mean, it should become a disciplined part of a person's life. And you know what helps? It helps you discipline your whole life. Also, Paul said, I bring my body under subjection. I discipline my body. And Paul said, through much travail and much fasting. And it was, if you look at the early church fathers, Irenaeus, Polycarp, Ignatius, Justin Martyr, fasting was just part of life. And I know you've heard of probably John Wesley, Methodist. He wouldn't ordain a person unless they fasted Wednesday and Friday. You know, I mean, that's a little hardcore, but what he's saying is, if a man can't discipline his body, he's not fit to lead others. And there's a lot of truth in that, because it is a discipline that I think helps. For me, it flows into into all different disciplines. People are struggling with lust. If they fast, it kills it. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't come back again, but there's a discipline of what's taking place in the body.
Yeah. I mean, feast, famine, and we're stuck in feast mode. Our bodies are designed to fast for, again, our minds. You know, we're craving it as a nation right now. I believe, you know, as a people, as a human, you know, we're stuck with abundance, really, and that there is consequences to that. I believe by adding fasting into your world, I mean, your life will change. I'm telling you, it will. I mean, there is no doubt about it. How long ago was your first fast?
You know what I would say? It's funny. I look at the videos, and I'm 40 pounds heavier back then, and I think it was 2011, and I just got up in the morning and just going throughout the day, and I could feel my blood sugar. I thought I was hypoglycemic, borderline hypoglycemic, but come to find out I was really addicted to sugar. You know, so many people are misdiagnosed. I mean, the body is designed to fast. Your body will regulate its own blood sugar levels. It will release hormones at the correct level at the correct time. But I actually barely got it through my first day. I had a little bit of orange juice, but I had ups and downs, tremendous downs. And then I started to get into a little bit more and encourage people. The first couple of days can be really difficult because your body's going through some serious cleansing. So you want to make sure maybe it's a vacation day. You're not working, you're not around people if possible. So that's when I really started, was 2011. I started to teach on it on our website, westsidechristianfellowship.org. We've got about 12 sermons on fasting, the spiritual benefits of fasting from a biblical perspective.
And you also, you put it kind of all in one book too. What is the name of the book, and where do they get it?
Yeah, it's called Feasting and Fasting. Feasting and Fasting, what works, what doesn't, and why. And it's actually, it's a free ebook at westsidechristianfellowship.org. They can just click the ebooks, and it's right there as one of the free ebooks. And many years ago, I was a district manager for 24-Hour Fitness. I don't know if you have that in your area, but it was with, we merged and became a big corporation. And you didn't talk about fasting in the fitness industry, bodybuilding, and it was, man, no way.
Ruins your metabolism. I mean, the whole thing. Everything's the opposite. It ruins your metabolism. It fixes your metabolism.
Exactly. As you know, fasting, I mean, eating takes up, 50% of our energy. It's very taxing on the body, and trying to assimilate and then get rid of the junk we're eating. It's just, I think it's a great discipline that we should incorporate. If people are wondering how, I would suggest starting with a meal or two if you haven't done it before, and then building up. But I think you can chime in even more. So I think that the benefits, you're going to have to probably plan on a 3-day water fast to really start to get benefits. But the longer you go, the more benefits they're seeing.
Exactly.
So more to tell people, well, here's what you need to do, because it also, what you're trying to accomplish will also determine how long you're fasting. Like in your wife's case, you could have went weeks. or she could have went weeks to get rid of that cancer, because when autophagy takes place and the body begins to consume the cancer cell, the cancerous tumor, that's not a quick process sometimes.
No, exactly. And longer fast, you can dial into that autophagy in a much greater. Yeah, in my new book coming out, Beyond Fasting, we take people, we get them fat adapted. So it's a 7-week program. And we talk about how to move into a ketotic state. And then we start skipping meals. Or actually, the first thing we do is take snacks away, because believe it or not, the average American is eating between 17 and 21 times. Now, I know people think they're not, because they're not sitting down to a meal, but they're eating a handful of nuts, the kombucha, the boom, boom, boom. And it's all of that. Every time you raise glucose and insulin, it's a meal. So that's
I heard you say that a month ago, and I was like, I don't know. And I watched, and you're right, because you grab some cashews, a little bit later, a Kavita drink, a little bit later, grab this, and I was up to 12 times after lunch.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, I'm sorry,
people think of that as like sitting down to a meal. I'm like, no, it's not really how it works. But anyways, so, and then the next week we miss a meal, right? Then we start intermittent fasting. So that fat adapts. So then I imply my diet variation principle, where we'll go one day with one meal, and then we add a feast day in there, because the feasts are actually as important as the fast days, because it reminds the body it's not starving. And then we enter into the fast, and then the last week is how to break the fast. But so it really is, to your point, there's a way to prepare to get fat adapted. So when you get in, here's the whole thing is, you can benefit once you become very metabolically flexible and fat adapted. What takes people 4 days to start benefiting from a fast, you can actually start benefiting one day in a fast. And so yeah,
you've got the body ready. I should throw this out there too, just in case. If a person feels that God is leading them to a fast, I would say do it. Go cold turkey and deal with it. Because I've known people that said, Shane, it wasn't that bad at all. I'm like, you stop Krispy Kreme and coffee and fast food? And she goes, yeah, I'm sleeping great. I'm like, that's a miracle.
I believe that too, man. If God puts on your heart, just do it.
Yeah.
We prepare people to maximize the physical benefits.
Absolutely.
But when you're talking about when God puts it on your heart, you just fast. Like my wife said, fast for your son.
You might want to clarify too what you mean by fat adaptation. Adaptation is when the body's adapting to burning calories in a certain way.
Yeah, so using fat, your cells can use two things for energy, sugar or fat. When you become adapted, now you're able to use fat as an energy. Most Americans are stuck hormonally as sugar burners, meaning they can't go back and forth. So what happens when they're not eating? They either crave sugar or carbohydrates, or it'll break their muscle down into sugar, right? I mean, it has to get sugar. So it's either a craving, and if you're strong enough to do without the craving, it'll break your muscle down. So becoming fat adapted is to get your cells to actually use fat for energy when you're not eating.
What's the easiest way you would recommend people do that? Basically by cutting out mainly the complex carbs and a lot of the sugar?
Yeah, so I teach on ketosis. I'm not a believer in staying in ketosis.
I'm right there with you, because overall it's not a good spot for the body to stay.
Exactly. Our bodies are meant to be in and out of that state. It's survival.
I just met somebody this week, last month, and his cholesterol was at 400. He's eating butter and turkey and bacon, and they don't understand. I'm never touching beans. I'm never touching fruit, but they forget about the antioxidant properties in the fruit. The beans, look at the bacteria, the probiotic benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
And it feeds your good bacteria. See, when we look at our ancestors, they were forced in times of eating beans and legumes and all kinds of vegetables and fruits. And then there's times where they ate lard for 3-4 months, right? I mean, because that's all that they could do, right? Or there was, times of famine. And so our bodies need those different times. But yeah, so to get fat adapted, you can drop someone's carbohydrates under 50, and it'll force them eventually into a ketosis
state. Yeah.
And again, so fat adapting and then starting that fasting principle, you will get more out of your fast. I mean, there's no doubt, because you're basically putting yourself in the way our ancestors were, very metabolically flexible, meaning you can go back and forth from sugar burner to fat burner. That's a very healthy place to be. So like for me, right, if I'm not in ketosis and I'm eating just even a plant-based diet, if I go without food for, maybe I don't eat till 3 p.m. In the afternoon, my ketones will be, 0.9, 1.0. I'll go into ketosis quickly. Yeah, because that's being metabolically flexible, but it's because I fast a lot, right?
And
so
your carb storage are low in your liver and your muscle. Then you've depleted your carbohydrate storage, and you're going into fat as your fuel much quicker.
Absolutely. And you could train your body to do that. And basically it's what our ancestors, they were able to do.
They didn't have a grocery store in every corner where they could pick grapes and bananas and beans and potatoes. And, it was selective based on seasons, really, what was growing, Absolutely. And if you go back to people ask this a lot too, if you go back to creation, I believe God created us to be primarily plant-based. The life-giving elements, the enzymes, the phytochemicals in the plants are to give life to us. Now, I'm not against meat, but you don't see meat introduced until after the fall and after the flood. So 1,600 years after creation or so, if you take the Bible literally on the dates, which I do, then God said, okay, now it's permissible to eat meat. But is that because vegetation was sparse and now
people argue, our genetics changed and,
could be,
no doubt we became omnivores, to your point, actually. But, and then add from that plant-based diet in times of what our ancestors did, right? Times of ketosis.
Absolutely.
We were eating higher fat, higher meat, and there's massive benefit there. But if you stay in those times, there's no doubt it can be detrimental. But again, my argument, and I make the argument in book, is, we have our camps, we have our vegans, we have our paleo, we have our ketosis people, we have our vegetarians.
And then the raw crowd don't cook anything.
And the raw crowd, right? There's fruitarians. I don't know what the heck you call them. I forget.
Anyway, just eat all fruit.
Yeah. So the point is, though, is the beauty when you look at ancient cultures is the magic is not one of those diets. The magic is all variation. Actually, that I was speaking of the scientist I interviewed. He talked about why our DNA is set up for that variation and why these shifts actually make more sense. So when you look at studies on just something as simple as weight loss, you can compare every diet, plant, just vegetarian, vegans, paleo. Nothing works better than a diet that actually varies. So,
but why too, though, as you've talked about this before, is your hormonal balance, your growth hormone levels, your testosterone, cortisol, even feeling better, dopamine, and what you're doing is the body doesn't become used to a certain diet, and then it adapts. It adapts to what you're doing, and you can stay stuck in this area. Our bodies were meant to change, and more growth hormone is released during fasting. You have more of cortisol is released here, testosterone, then it's declining, and then you see this wonderful balancing act, and it goes back to how we were created. We were not created to go and open a refrigerator and eat whenever we want, as much as we want, and we're definitely paying the price now.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think the best example is just exercise, right? If you go to the gym and you do the same exercise all the time, in the beginning you got results, but then the results stop. Oh, and then you go to a new gym or someone comes along and shows you the new thing and you're like, oh my gosh, all these results again. It wasn't the new thing, it was the change.
Well, because people, when they shape their body, muscle doesn't really grow while you're working out. It grows as you're sleeping after it's been torn and worked out. So if your body gets used to the same press machine day in and day out, it adapts to it. But if you begin to change that angle, you add more stabilization training, and where the body doesn't know how to adapt, you'll see remarkable results because the body as a whole, now your core is engaged, your abdominal muscles are going to get stronger, your legs are engaged, your chest is engaged. So mixing things up. And isn't that how we were designed? You're out in the field, you're farming, you're working, you're moving. And it just, to me, it's common sense. Look at how the Creator created us. And I go back and forth sometimes now that I've released some videos on this, and look at the human body. How can you believe it just happened on its own? That takes more faith to me. Look at a birth of a child. That's the placenta knew how to connect to this, and the sperm and the egg met, and then the creation, and then the heart and the liver started to form. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling. It just screams creator.
It's amazing, and God put in our bodies that ability, that innate intelligence to survive. And by the way, everything that you were talking about is driven by survival. The growth hormone rise, right? When you change exercise, and it has to adapt. So it raises up hormones, hormone optimization. It's one of the benefits of fasting. And, when you shift your diet, you literally have to adapt to that food change. And it uses the same adaptation principle it does with exercise. You get stronger, your microbiome gets stronger. And anyways, that's a
hormone that not many people are talking about. I think I've only heard a few of your videos, but glucagon. Yeah. Glucagon, which opposes insulin being released. So people have insulin being released all the time. Type 2 diabetes is skyrocketing. We don't know what to do. It's diet related. As you're fasting, glucagon, this hormone, increases substantially. And what does glucagon do? It's very beneficial. It's very supportive in fat loss and weight management, not storing fat. So insulin is the fat store because it pushes into the cells and causes the body to store this fuel, where glucagon during fasting teaches the body to remove these items and burn these stored energy instead of storing it. So just incredible how we were designed.
Yeah, it's opposite of insulin. Insulin store fat. Glucagon, let's release fat. Yeah, we got to burn it out. Yeah, it's amazing design, right? It's only points to God in my mind, and how do you ignore that? You can't. What as a pastor, what I'm sure, have you done any like fasts with your congregation, like group fasts? Because I mean, obviously your congregation must be educated in this topic more than most.
Yeah. Well, we try to. The hard part with corporate fast, we've grown quite a bit as a church, so it's hard to have everyone involved because you have working moms.
You invite them.
Yeah, we're expecting our 5th child, and that will change some things for my wife fasting. Obviously, you don't want to. I don't really recommend that. Pregnant moms and breastfeeding, and you obviously need that fuel. But corporately, funny you said that. We started a 40-day fast. And people can do water throughout the time. They can do like a Daniel fast, I don't really call it a Daniel fast because you're not fasting. It's really a Daniel eating program. But you are starving that fleshly elements of wanting meat and dairy and sugar. And we could talk for the next hour on the benefits we have seen from people, which marriages being restored, the prodigal sons and daughters coming back to God, health issues. Everything from inflammation to diabetes to heart disease, where you see tremendous results, and that's why it's so hard. I believe that those things, in the spiritually speaking, that are the most important, praying and spending time with God and fasting and seeking Him, that's why they're so difficult, because they're so important. So we've seen some amazing results. We actually have people that have just fasted from caffeine. Coffee. I know there's, it's debatable on this topic for sure. If you're going to have caffeine, I would suggest maybe some green tea. But when you're having a pot a day and all these energy drinks and people with tremendous results just coming off of caffeine, they're calm. They don't fight and argue with their spouse as much. They don't get upset in traffic, and just so fasting. I would encourage people to take it to God and say, what area do I need to work on? What do I need to remove from my life, and begin removing those things and plan. I tell people, plan for hell, but pray for heaven when it comes to these draws. Because a lot of times people give up because they're not prepared. Oh, I've got a headache. I feel lightheaded. I better eat. Well, not necessarily. You might need to lay down and let this fast work its way through. But we do, encourage medical support and consulting with a physician. Throw that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many people know they just need to break through. They need to get through that difficulty, especially if they're coming off of medications. Have you seen the opiate crisis now? So many people are addicted to Vicodin and Xanax and Oxy and trying to get off of those things. And so there's, you don't want to just come off of Xanax, for example.
There is a warning there. If you're on, you got to talk to your doctor about it, because certain diabetic medications, psychotropic medications, all the medications you're referencing, pain medications, you need to speak to your doctor because it can be a game changer. So absolutely.
It's a weaning off process because you're restabilizing the brain chemicals, and there's a process of walking the body back through and back down to a healthy state.
So give some viewers okay, I want to fast for spiritual reasons. I want to fast for my husband, daughter, me, whatever. I mean, it could be someone else, could be you for spiritual reasons. Give some people some advice on, what you would recommend you do. How do you pray? What do you do? How do you set up? I mean, you really want to maximize your time with God. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. And most people should start out just praying and seeking God. Okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? And I think it's important to have some type of time frame, a goal to shoot for. Anytime I say, I'm just going to fast, I'll see how long this goes. Your body, we call it the defense attorney within. He talks you out of that fasting as quick as you got into, I'll start Monday. It wasn't a good day. And then I start fasting, let me start after this potluck. And, so I would say, okay, I'm going to do this for a week. I'm going to use this first couple days to get off all the junk food, processed food, caffeine. I'm going to cleanse my body. And people don't realize how hard of a fast that is. That's not an easy venture at all, to starve yourself of all these things you've been addicted to. So I would encourage people to get with God, set up a commitment, 7 days, 10 days, 21 days of maybe using the first week to get healthy, and then start, like you said, adaptation, getting the body ready. I think there's wisdom in that. I think it's wise to prepare, and then you set the goal and you pray and you fast. We don't want to forget about praying and fasting. Now, ironically, you're going to find that you have a lot more time when you're not eating. I was shocked how much extra time. I mean, you're talking, 2-3 hours extra a day that you have. And so set that time aside and pray and seek God. And let's say after 4 days, you just snap and you grab some cashews, like I've done in the past. You get back on track. Now, you might lose some of the benefits of the autophagy and ketosis and things, but we're doing it for spiritual reasons. God doesn't look at perfection. He looks at your heart. And it's the heart that's set and going in the right direction, not that's perfect. Now, I don't want to give people permission to just indulge, but I want to encourage them. I mean, my first 1 week fast, I had a scoop of raw protein powder with a little rice milk at night just so I could get to sleep, because the growth hormone levels were high, cortisol release, and I could not get to sleep. I had a speaking engagement the following morning, and I just got back on track the next morning. I fell forward. So I hope that answers your question. I would have a plan, whether it's one day, I'm going to miss breakfast and lunch, and I'm going to go into this slowly, or whether it's 2 days or 3 days, just have a plan in place and then honor that commitment, try to honor that plan and ask God, what he wants you to do. And I believe we'll get this sensing, we'll get this direction of what we need to fast. I know there's people in our congregation who have fasted 20 to 40 days, water only. And it can be done. You don't die. I mean, the record is over a year and a half.
Yeah.
They monitored him at the Scotland University.
Mm-hmm.
He was taking supplements during that time. We don't recommend it, but the body can go because you're not starving. You're not starving. If you're 20, 30 pounds overweight, you've got a good month's worth of caloric intake there, of caloric reserves that you can burn. Starvation is when your body starts to burn critical organs and things, and you very few people reach that, because your body also tells you, okay, it's time to eat.
It does. I mean, you get hungry. The innate intelligence knows, right? I mean, it really does. And there's some other manifestations. We had a guy at one of my past seminars. He was on 120 days of just water. Now, he was obese, but he had lost 100 pounds at that point. He was off like 14 different medications with his doctor. And his blood work went from like, you're a dying man, to like spot on. I mean, so,
really?
And it was funny because I spoke about how when to break a fast. It was one of my topics. And he was like, oh my gosh, said, this just started happening to me, right? His tongue was like, it went from white to yellow to green to black. And then a week ago, it had started turning pink again. And I was explaining how that's one of the signs to break a fast and how hunger comes back and thirst changes again. So anyways, he ended up breaking his fast, I think like a week later. But yeah, so the body is capable of doing some amazing healing during that time.
And you know what, you mentioned the medications. This might be a good thing. If somebody's on blood pressure medication, for example, and it's lowering their blood pressure, fasting in and of itself is going to lower your blood pressure. So you don't want to be medicating on top of fasting. And that's why you want to talk with your physician. You want to make sure. And here's what I found. You need to tell your physician, here's what I'm doing.
Yes.
Will you monitor me? Don't say, what do you think about fasting?
Right. Because they don't know.
No, I mean, my cardiologist has a pot of coffee. I go every few years. I had myopericarditis when I was in my 20s from steroid use, testosterone, ethynate, propionate, and bodybuilding. And I had strep throat. It went to my heart as a viral infection. So I've kind of monitored, but they've got this huge pot of coffee. It says, do not take it a stress test. And he's overweight. They don't eat healthy. Another doctor wanted to put me on high blood pressure medication 3 years ago. And I asked him, did you use the large cuff measure? He goes, oh, no, I don't think we did. We used a small one. Then they put the large one on. Oh, you're fine. It's just, there's things like this. They want to prescribe, hey, take this antibiotic, and it's ciprofloxacin, the black box warnings on Cipro, and they don't know how the body works. So we need doctors. I love physicians. They're friends of mine. But when it comes to how the body works, many of them they don't know how the body, they know, hey, here's what's wrong here. This pill will fix it. For example, you go to a physician, they'll prescribe statin drugs for your high cholesterol. Well, why not look at the diet? Because cholesterol is good, HDL, LDL, both those are cholesterol overall. Our body needs it. Cholesterol is not bad. It's the inflammation that's causing it. It's the damage that we're doing to our own body. So I think sometimes we throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Big smile on my face because I'm thinking, my gosh, this guy is the most educated pastor on health that I think in history. I'm really happy.
It's by God's grace. I think he's shown me a lot of this. And I actually, when I listen to you and doctors speak on this area, I'd feel very inadequate. I'm more of a jack of all trades, trying to get a little bit here and there from all different groups. But I think God is called. I think pastors should be not only voicing spiritual truth in our culture. Don't get me going on that, on the direction of our culture and the pulpits being silent, but we also need to help people shepherd their body. But a lot of pastors are addicted to coffee. We've got donuts in the lobby. We love the big potlucks. And if we don't have this area under control, it's hard to preach on what you yourself are not practicing.
Listen, I have been to where a lot of churches were like, oh, we don't discuss that here. Meanwhile, they'll talk about all these, off ramps in relationships. And, they'll go through all the thing, money, relationships. I'm like, well, where's nutrition here? Well, where's diet? It's like, because, I can tell you I've been sick, and you become very selfish when you get very sick, right? You become very self-focused. My mind was not focused on God. I was surviving. So I can tell you, you better add it to the pulpit, no doubt about it.
And maybe I should, this might help a lot of people. Many pastors think, and this was brought in early Christianity, where the flesh is bad. So anything to do with, fasting, go live in a monastery out in the desert, nothing. And so we've kind of came to the other extreme where now we think that we kind of put fasting with the monks and works-based religion, like I'm abstaining, I'm doing works, and really it's about feeding the spirit and denying the flesh. It's very biblical. But also a lot of pastors think bodily exercise profits nothing, when really the scriptures say bodily exercise profits a little, but don't put that above spiritual benefits. So it's a matter of putting, and I believe I've seen this so many times, when a person is disciplined spiritually, it helps physically. And when they're disciplined physically, it can help spiritually. They run parallel. They're not distinct, compartmentalized. They run together, disciplined in all areas, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. You need that. So, and it's not, I hate to talk down on pastors because I know it's a hard job, but we have to look at this topic and look at our own bodies. I've prayed with so many people about anxiety, panic attacks, angry outbursts. And in my heart, I know a lot of this is diet related. Get off the energy drinks and the caffeine, stop snapping at your children. I'll pray for your heart disease and your diabetes, but you have to lose 70 pounds. That's just wisdom. That's wise. We're actually reaping what we're sowing.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, right? Pastor, pray for me, pray for my heart disease, pray for my diabetes. Then you see them eating the donut. I'm like, oh man, we're dying from a lack of knowledge oftentimes, Pastor, right?
Yeah. And I should interject that God does answer in spite of their lifestyle choices. I mean, I've seen him,
thank God.
Yeah, thank God. But we are called to be good stewards of this wonderful gift that he has given us. I think we forget that. This is this is this wonderful gift. And we know, ask anybody, should I eat an apple or a Snickers bar? They know they need to be eating God-given, God-created food. So I think there's some disobedience going on too when we choose to continue to eat in a destructive way. My heart breaks for the children. Look at what we're feeding kids. From Doritos and energy drinks, that's the most popular thing right now. Doritos, you look at the ingredients in their monosodium glutamate, food coloring, GMO processed. It's not good. And so we're giving them candy and cookies, and why are cavities? When I was younger, you get cavities, but now it's like some kids have 5, 6, 7 each time. And oral health is so important. Oral health really affects our whole body. So what are we doing to our kids? And people say, well, they're not overweight. No, but they're malnourished. Just because they're skinny doesn't mean they're healthy. They could be living off caffeine like a crack addict lives off, that addictive substance. And I know it's a little hard to hear for people, but I think we need to start telling people what they need to hear and not what they want to hear. And I've got some videos on YouTube, The Pantry Pastor. I went through people's homes and go through their whole pantry. And you have to throw out 90% of what is in our pantries and in our refrigerator. 90% of what is in there is not good. And what we mean by that, is it God-given? This is it how God designed it? All the enzymes, the phytochemicals, the antioxidants, which take the free radicals, they fight the free radicals. And so you're eating God-giving, God-sustaining, life-giving food, or you're eating dead food from a factory. I'm just surprised we've made it this long with this type of lifestyle.
I hope your congregation grows to beyond your expectations, because you're speaking some stuff that not many pastors are speaking. Let me tell you something. What a balance you are. I have to say, and balance is the key.
That's the key.
Yeah. When we look at why people are sick, beyond even physical, mentally, spiritually, in every aspect, it's this imbalance, lack of homeostasis in their spiritual well-being, their physical and their emotional well-being, and look, fasting's a part of it, but all these other topics that you're hitting on is a huge part of it. One last word, advice for people on this topic, fasting. If you had one last word for them, what would it be?
Give me a good leading question.
Yeah, here I am watching the show, right?
Well,
here I am. Thinking about the person watching the show going, I'm worried about fasting. Should I fast? What would your advice be?
Well, number one, overconsumption is killing us. Fasting doesn't. But I would encourage people to fall forward. I don't know too many people who said, you know what, I'm gonna fast, and they've actually accomplished a 3-day water or a 4-day fight. There are people, I know them, but the majority of people I'm seeing, they start out and it's so hard, so difficult that they just give up. So I want to encourage that person. That was me years ago. And even sometimes now it's still a challenge to fast. I do intermittent fasting like you do. I haven't eaten yet today. It's 3:30 our time. I'm going to go and eat a nice, huge, big salad. And I usually get my protein from bone broth, shakes and things. But to fall forward, hey, learn. I like your new book coming out. I recommend that they read that, get their body adapted, unless God is saying, no, do something now. The direction our nation is going, like you mentioned with abortion, with calling good evil and evil good, the direction we are going now is not a good direction. More than ever, we've got to wake up. We've got to humble ourselves before God, and we've got to just start that 1,000-mile journey starts with the first footstep. So I would really encourage people to fall forward. You might not master it your first time, but you'll start to educate yourself. You'll start to discipline your body instead of your body disciplining you. So what last word of thought here is maybe start with one meal. And people say, oh, that's pretty easy. It's a lot harder than you think. Try to go 6, 7, 8 hours without eating nothing but clean water. And you'll see just how hungry your flesh is. And don't give up, though, because there's a breakthrough right around the struggle. And to me, the struggle, the difficulty just confirms how important it is.
Pastor Shane, you're a wealth of knowledge, and just give your website again, where your church is, and all that information one more time.
Well, we've got ShaneIdelman.com, so they can go to ShaneIdelman.com, or the church website is WestsideChristianFellowship.org, WestsideChristianFellowship.org. Also, we just purchased 4 radio stations, so they can find us at WCF. That's WCF for Westside Christian Fellowship, WCFradio.org. And we're trying to get some of these health messages on the radio as well, because it's so important, especially for believers to really steward their bodies.
Absolutely. Where's your church located exactly?
We're in Southern California. Most people don't know where Palmdale is, Lancaster. We're in Leona Valley, which is about 15 minutes west of Palmdale in Southern California. So I just tell people an hour north of Los Angeles. And,
well, I'm going to be up in, for a wedding, I'm going to be in Laguna Beach. How far are you from there? I might come see you.
About 2 hours if you don't hit traffic.
Yeah, if you don't hit traffic. Yeah. That's funny. You're funny. You're even funny.
I'm going to be on FoxNews.com tomorrow with Lauren Green. And if people put in Fox News, Shane Idleman on Fox News, they can see some of the recent debates did on Fox News. And so I'm heading down there tomorrow. I've got to take into consideration the traffic, but we'd love to connect sometime and get you out here to speak to our people about the benefits of, because you take it to a whole new level in regard to autophagy and, the body consuming itself and epigenetics and how the DNA works. And we'd love to get some resources on that.
I'll do it. I love the topic, and because of your knowledge base, I'd love to do it for you. So, Pastor, thanks again.
Let's do it. I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. This episode was brought to you by Cyto Detox. Please check it out at buycytonow.com for more information. We'll be back next week and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We truly appreciate your support. You can always find us at podcast.drpompa.com. And please remember to spread the love by liking, subscribing, giving an iTunes review, and sharing the show with anyone you think may benefit from the information heard here. And as always, thanks for listening.